Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast. Today we are joined by Jared Caroff of Function Reforged. Hello, Jared.
What's up, Rob?
Yes. So thank you for joining the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Yes. Now, how long have you and I known each other?
Well, a long time. There was a picture that surfaced of you in middle school and me as a toddler because your mom was my daycare teacher.
Yeah.
So we've known each other for quite a long time, and then got to know each other a lot better when I brought you on as my coach for powerlifting when I was in graduate school.
Yeah.
Kind of small world when I went to Wingate, and you had a gym not far away in Rock Hill, and yeah, it was fun. My dad was like, "Oh, you should reach out to Rob. He has a gym down there." So I was like checking out your stuff, and I was like, "Oh, this could be a really good idea." And then it was probably the best decision in training I've ever made.
Oh, dude, I've absolutely very much enjoyed getting to work with you. So for the listeners who might be new to you, let's give some background. I want to start with your competitive background.
Okay. So, how far back do you want me to go?
Whatever you think is interesting.
All right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, growing up, played sports. Competitively, I've probably done just about every sport, but, in high school, I focused more on wrestling, did track and field, and then decided not to do any sports in college. I was always obsessed with like strength and strength sports. Like World's Strongest Man was like my favorite thing on TV.
That's
and
awesome.
So I used to literally just go in my backyard and just carry stones around for like workouts for wrestling and stuff. My dad had all these giant rocks in our backyard, and I used to just go throw them around and put divots in the yard. Yeah. That's that's what I did for a while. And then he got me into to weight training initially, was my dad. And then once I got into undergrad, I started just, quote unquote, doing powerlifting. Really, I just did squatting, benching, deadlifting with my buddies and just training like a bunch of meatheads. It was fun. And then when I got to graduate school, I figured out that I wasn't, doing anything to really keep myself active in the gym. I get bored easily. I used to just look up YouTube videos of cool things to do in the gym, like one-arm dumbbell snatches or whatever. And
you have very good strength for like random weird things.
Yeah, I'm weirdly good at like strange lifts, which is frustrating sometimes because I feel like I'm better at strange lifts than I am at the actual competitive lifts. But
you're pretty damn good at those too, though.
Well, thanks. But yeah, that's when I did one meet that I didn't really train for too well. It was my first powerlifting meet ever. It was down in like Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah.
There's like a big state fairgrounds there. They have this like indoor coliseum type thing. And 2 weeks out, I didn't even know what I could do, so I tested my maxes. And my dad actually came down to help me because he used to compete, and that's when I caught the bug. And then bombed out of my second meet. And then after that, I was like, I want to be good at this. And then I reached out to you.
Yeah, that was awesome. Like, it's been a fun journey. You're crazy strong, so you have like over 500 dots. And so your competitive body weight, we were actually playing around with that a little bit right now, but you've competed at 146. Has all your competitions been at 146?
Yeah, so like the 67.5 kilo. I'm usually under when I weigh in, but I've been getting bigger finally. So
yes, which is exciting.
Probably be somewhere in the 150s.
Yeah, oh yeah, I think because you're shredded. Like when you went in for weigh-ins, like you had veins in your lower back. So like you had veins everywhere. So you definitely have capacity to add muscle and have the strength jump with the added muscle to make it still a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
So what's your best squat, bench, deadlift?
Competition or gym?
Both, because I like hearing both.
Okay, so in a meet, my best squat I think is 473. I missed 501 at the last meet. My best bench I think is 325 or 330.
I was gonna say I think it's 325.
Yeah, because I think it's 325. I missed 335, I believe, at the last meet, and then my best deadlift in a meet is 633.
Yeah, which is crazy. So now the fun numbers, the gym.
Yeah, the ones that don't count. I've hit 518 on a squat in the gym. 350 I have officially hit with a pause, not competition pause probably, but pause dish.
Yeah, it was good pause.
three times now. I've hit
Mm-hmm.
350, and then 675 is the most I've pulled in the gym.
Yeah. And those are all like all of your lifts are very clean because we don't want you to get hurt. And then you have a good natural standard of wanting to have lifts be clean as well. So the gym lifts, they're going to happen in the meets. Some of the challenge has just been getting some of the weight cuts and trying to feel strong. And one of the things, like this might be, something we've maybe don't go too detailed into, but it comes up in my mind right now, is your strength level is very, very, very high. It's actually much higher than most people that you and I would talk to or help with powerlifting. Meaning, if somebody's squatting 1.5 to 2 times their body weight, that's exceptional. You're at like 3 times your body weight.
Yeah.
And what's been interesting programming wise is to see how much your main lifts contribute towards your overall development, and then what amount of volume and intensity you actually need in accessories. And what I mean by that is you need far less intensity and far less weight load in your accessories than what a typical program would call for. And as we've been able to play with that, you've been able to come into like meets feeling more and more fresh. And that's been exciting to see. And I think as we're continuing to develop that, we're going to see more of the gym numbers becoming our meet numbers.
Yeah, it's been fun to like see how we do programming now, because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like as I've gotten stronger, like when we don't have a meet coming up, you beat the absolute living bejesus out of me, like
Yeah.
with volume on everything, and it's
Yeah.
like still heavy, and I'm like, oh my god. And then as like a meet comes in, that stuff tapers off a little bit, and we found
Mm-hmm.
that like adding a lot of like plyometric stuff.
Yes.
You've added a lot of like the jump, which I love doing jumps. I could do jumps all day.
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's been interesting to see how I actually my squat tends to do pretty well when I'm handling heavy weights, if I'm working a lot on like plyos and just a
Yeah.
little bit less on the volume in other accessories, like doing more of the explosive work. It's
Yeah.
interesting how that carries over.
It's been fun. Like the one of the kind of a categorical way of describing it is we've lessened the soft tissue like muscle tissue damage, but we keep the connective tissue like stress, but stress in a good way, like the progressive adaptation stress. So you wouldn't want to back off on like we do want to back off on muscle tissue damage getting closer to a meet, but at your strength level we don't want to sacrifice or give up on connective tissue health and connective tissue strength. And that's been one of the components with programming that is very fun for your programming is how do I keep your connective tissue continuing to get stronger but lessen the muscle tissue damage along the way. And that's been a super fun game to play as the programmer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a like to give people an example. It was probably what 3 or 4 weeks ago, right before I got sick. The block we were on, my squat accessory day was. I mean, I had that superset of I was
Is
doing
me.
zombie squats
Yeah.
for 10 reps with goblet squats for 20 reps, and then some vertical and broad jumps. And I mean, I could barely walk out of the gym
Yeah.
after doing that. And I had sled drags and stuff before that. So it was a lot of volume. Really, I mean, squats felt heavy. And we were also pushing high bar squats at the time.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So really trying to, my weak point is my quads on the squat. So we were hammering those. And then, as I got sick a little bit. We ended up having to back it off anyway because we're coming in close to a meet. But
Yeah.
we backed it off, and now it's just a lot of like more plyo. So we do some mobility, some plyo stuff, and
Mhm.
it's crazy kind of to see like the rebound on like how quick my strength is like turning around now that we're back on a low bar squat after
Yeah.
beating me up so much.
Yeah. It's fun to see like the super compensation component of programming. Is I was actually just talking to a client earlier today, not to get too off in the weeds, but they were asking about those devices that measure fatigue. So, like a Garmin watch, the Whoop bands, and all these things that measure fatigue. And what's interesting is there are going to be individual cases where maybe this isn't true, but in the large scenario, most people that have those type of devices that measure fatigue, it's interesting how that is to be interpreted, because often they'll see fatigue and they'll say, oh, I must not train, I shouldn't train today, or I shouldn't do XYZ today. And my response is always, well, if you want to be adapting and growing and developing, you are going to be fatigued. Like, the body has to feel a degree of stress that the adaptations we want would be necessary to make. So
Yeah.
there is a too fatigued, but you can't just feel fresh as a daisy and feel wonderful all the time. You do have to feel a little bit beat up, a little bit tired from time to time. And that example you gave, where further from a meet, we feel pretty beat up a lot because we want a lot of adaptive response at that time. But then getting closer to a meet, we pull off on that because now we want to express the strength we've developed, not really try to dig in to build up more.
Yeah.
So it's interesting monitoring and managing fatigue.
Yeah, and I know that's hard to do as a coach too, because you're going subjectively off of what people are saying, and everybody's a little
Yeah.
different. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but with all these smartwatches and everything that are like measuring your quote unquote fatigue, um, I find that people kind of get in their heads a little bit about it. So
Oh,
like they'll be like, their watch will be like, "Oh, your recovery was trash. You didn't sleep well," or like yeah, whatever. It just tells them their recovery was trash. So then in their head, they're like, "Oh, I can't have a good workout today, or I got to skip my workout today, or whatever it is." And I just think that, it's okay to have some measurables for yourself, but you can't let that dictate how you like what you're doing that day. Like, I mean, yeah, sometimes you have nights where you sleep like 3 hours, but you might have the best lift of your whole
yeah.
block. Just sometimes it just happens, and that's okay. But like I think it's just some of this measurement. It's just people get too in their heads about it, and then some of them too. Like Whoop is only good at measuring like your cardiovascular fatigue. It can't
Mm.
actually. It has no way to measure what your fatigue is like for weight training, at least to what I know.
Wonderful
So
point. Absolutely wonderful point is there's a large difference between like cardiovascular fatigue, muscle damage fatigue, like there's no way it's measuring that, and then CNS fatigue. So like you might look at like say bodybuilding clients, they have an enormous amount of muscle damage all the time, but their overall fatigue might not register very high, but yet they're beat up, they're tired, they might want to take a nap, but they're like, oh, this thing says I should be fine, but I don't feel fine. And I'm like, well, it's not measuring your muscle damage. Like it doesn't know all levels of fatigue. And that, like you said, can be really hard for confidence. There was actually, like, I'm down in Miami this week and I'm training at Ghost Gym,
mhm.
and the physical therapist in the gym, he was actually talking to his client. I was overhearing it but they were actually talking about the Whoop band. And he actually told his client, he said, "Yeah, it was a rough day. Like I woke up today and I felt great, but I looked at my watch and it said I was fatigued." And he said, "So I just kind of like wasn't sure what to do with my workout today." So that was a perfect example. It literally just happened like 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
that is some of the challenge of tracking data. Now, to get a little bit to keep that, but shift a bit, is there data that you track as a lifter, or data that you track with your clients that you work with through Function Reforge, that you like this certain data, but you don't really care about this data?
It depends on what I'm seeing people for. As far as lifting goes, I mean, you know, easy objective measures are just how much weight you can move in a certain thing,
Yeah.
or, it's not necessarily objective, but, measuring someone's degree of discomfort for something like on a bench press or whatever, I think is always kind of like get them back under it, have them do it. How much better does it feel?
Yeah.
Kind of seeing those progressions. I do like to use things like dynamometers to measure strength
Oh, yeah.
for specific movements, and
Okay.
actually kind of with the fatigue too. If you use a handheld dynamometer, your grip strength can be a predictor of fatigue a little bit, like nervous system fatigue.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes I'll play with that. If I'm having a rough day, I'm like, let's see how high I can get my grip.
Yeah.
and and then it's never as high as when I'm fresh, but that's okay.
Yeah. That is true. Like that's I've actually read a study on that because I was reading a couple studies on longevity, and they were saying how important grip strength is as a marker for health as you age.
Yeah.
So that in conjunction with that kind of data, they were talking about the impact of grip strength and like fatigue and things like that. So I know like another component is like bar speed. A
Hmm.
lot of people will use devices to check bar speed. Now, with the clients I've worked with for a long period of time, you can kind of just see how they're moving one day, and you're like, man, that looks slow.
Yep.
But for newer clients, like I've been very fortunate to work with like Olympic level and some professional level, where the budget is whatever I want them to get, they'll just go get. So I've asked them to get like certain devices where you attach it to the bar and it kind of measures speed. That is a pretty cool data point, but that's also another thing, like you said, is they could have 3 hours of sleep one night, eat like fruity pebbles for breakfast, and then still come in and blow up the numbers and do a great day. But it doesn't show that after that workout they're probably going to feel like crap. They're going to have poor recovery because they came into the workout so like underfed or undertook, like they weren't taking care of themselves. So then like it doesn't indicate what's going to happen afterwards.
Yeah.
So it's always, as with anything, there's 1,000 things that factor into what we're experiencing and what's going to happen, and it's just trying to find a couple that you understand and how to use well, and you can kind of balance your perception of what's happening versus like an objective data point, and then start to kind of put that together and learn how your body responds.
Yeah, and I think, with whether it's rehab or training, you do have to have the balance of, your objective data points, but also, the subjectivity is probably most important,
Yeah,
where, someone has to know that they have to feel like they're getting stronger, feel like
yeah,
they're getting better at whatever it is. So you can have all the objective data points proving that someone's progressing as much as you want, but if they don't feel that they are, then it doesn't matter.
yeah. And that's huge for mental health. That's huge for consistency. Like they're not going to follow a program if they don't feel like they're improving. They're going to burn out of that pretty quick. They're going to make some adjustments and change things without telling us maybe. But that is another component, is not only do you want to take care of physical adaptations and physical progression, but you do have to take care of the mental and emotional aspects of the person as well. So that's a whole nother challenge to it all.
Yeah, the best is when when I'll have clients who will come in with whatever back pain or whatever it is, and it's from squatting or deadlifting, and so we'll back off the barbell, we'll go through this whole thing, we'll set up a nice like program for them. I'm talking to coach is helping them with it, and then they'll come in and be like, yeah, so I threw a barbell on my back, and I decided I'd go for this, and now I'm in like a lot of pain, and I'm like, oh, that was
Yeah,
very smart.
yeah. It's like, why did we do the thing that like we're not doing that yet? Like I didn't write that for you. Yeah,
You didn't pay me to go
yeah.
do it. Like just listen just for a little
Yes.
bit.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now, I've mentioned Function Reforged a couple times, but so Function Reforged is your business. Can you tell me a little bit about what it is or what you do?
So I'm a physical therapist.
Mhm.
Function Reforged is my own physical therapy practice. I I ran an outpatient clinic for a company for about 3.5 years, and kind of got sick of the insurance system and having to deal with
Mhm.
insurances and that whole thing. So I stepped away from it. Also, just like how busy you have to be when you're billing insurance because reimbursement rates are so low
That's
for
interesting.
therapy. Yeah, so that's why when you go into a general outpatient clinic, it's like a zoo in there because they have to see a gazillion people to actually be able to like pay their employees and keep the facility up, let alone make any money.
Yeah,
Um, so I stepped away from that, did home health with my goal being eventually I wanted to start my own practice. And so I did, and I,
cool.
started my own practice. It's just an out-of-pocket based practice, but it's nice because it allows me to have just one-on-one time with clients for as long as I want or need to. We can spend a lot of time on, whatever it is that we need to work on, and I don't feel like I have to bounce around to 8 other people, run around like a chicken
Mm.
with my head cut off.
Yeah, that's very nice. Now you're located out in Pittsburgh.
Yep, Union Fitness. My
Yep.
office is located in Union Fitness, right on the north side of Pittsburgh. So if you do come into Pittsburgh, you want to come say hi. It's not
Yeah.
actually downtown. It's real easy to get to. North side's easy.
Yes. Yeah. That's Now, have you? I might be putting you on the spot, but have you worked with people like remotely?
I'm actually working on that now. I have done that. So at my previous job when the pandemic hit, I mean, I did a lot of remote visits,
Yeah.
which were always funny because sometimes you get older adults who weren't used to their technology. So
Oh,
we'd be
yeah,
on like a call and they just, face their phone or their computer up to the ceiling and be like, "Hey, am I doing it right?" And
yeah,
I'm like, "I don't know, but your ceiling looks good."
yeah. It's like your
Um,
face isn't even in the screen.
yeah, but
And
no, I'm working on getting set up to do remote visits. That's something I want to be able to provide for people. I
mhm.
think that's in a lot of ways where therapy is going for a lot of things is remote.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Just the convenience factor alone is huge.
mhm.
And then I know for my client, like some of the clients I work with, they have a home gym. And for example, they might say, hey, Jared, I'm having problems with my back. Would you be able to help me with my squat? And then all of a sudden you're seeing them in their gym and you find out their J cups are too high and they're like tiptoeing their way out of the squat rack. And you're like, oh, just lower your J cups. And then all of a sudden that solves like some issues.
Yeah,
So like there are some, like that's something I learned is when I started doing virtual was there were so many elements that I did in person for so many years that when I switched over to virtual, it was funny to see like, oh, these are quick and easy, simple fixes that there's no way I would have known that if I wouldn't have seen them in their environment.
yeah, and that's like I really want to get into it because it opens up to like my ability to help people who have to travel for work,
No, that's
or
true, very true.
or who actually do just train at home, and they might be a parent and don't have the convenience to come in,
Hmm.
things like that. So I'm working on getting that started.
Yeah, I think that'll be great. And then one of the things I think is great about the recent shift, and I would say I see this in like chiropractic work and physical therapists, is having somebody in that profession who also lifts weights. And if you don't mind, can you speak on what you think the impact is, what you learn in school, what you know via textbooks, versus having also put the bar on your back, having also dealt with some aches and pains from time to time? How much of an impact do you believe the the therapist also exercising makes on how well they can do at their job?
To be honest, I think that's probably the biggest difference. If you're a therapist, and you don't lift weights and you're having a lifter come to see you, you're not going to know what to do with them, and most of the time they just tell them, oh, don't squat, don't deadlift, don't do these things.
Oh,
And a lot of
yeah.
times it's still the negative, like, oh, it's bad for you. And I'm not going to go on a soapbox, but by like putting yourself in, whether it's athletics or if you're a runner or you're under a barbell, whatever it is, you understand the demands of that activity that much more, and
Mhm.
also understand the requirements as far as what range of motion needs to look like, what strength needs to look like, the variations in which people move, like just being in the gym all the time, for how many years, and just watching so many people move. There's so many different ways that somebody can squat, and it's not like
Yes.
one specific way is correct. Everybody's built a little differently, everybody's stronger in certain areas. So, there's no like quote unquote optimal position for everybody, but there is an optimal position for you.
Yeah.
And so I think, being a lifter myself is one of the like I think that's why I'm good at helping lifters.
Yes. And that's huge. I know, like, through when I used to teach at the university, I was also hosting like interns and stuff at the gym, and I would help trainers like become certified and develop as trainers. One of the first things I would always tell them is don't have a client do something you haven't done. Now, it doesn't mean, if I have a client who can squat 800 pounds, I can't squat 800 pounds. Does that mean I can't coach them? No. I know what a max effort squat feels like, and I know like elements that can help. But in the lines of if the trainer wants this person to say, do something as simple as like battle ropes, for conditioning, I'll ask them, I'm like, have you even done it? Like, do you know if the rope digs into your hand? How heavy is it? Like you got to know these elements to know what that person's going to feel. So then you can coach them because you're not only coaching on technique, you're coaching on how they feel. Do they
Yeah.
feel good? Do they feel right? Are they going to end up using their traps too much? But you got to know that. So now you can coach them not to do that. And that's something huge with chiropractors and physical therapists that I've seen. in my personal journey over the years is like I'm 40 now, and I started lifting weights when I was 16, and I had some injuries here and there due to sports and stuff outside of the gym. But when I was younger, say 16 to like early 20s, it was more common to go see a specialist who didn't also lift weights. But now it's becoming more common that they do have some relation to the lifting weights. And in my opinion, it makes it so much better. Like the person, if they're familiar with lifting weights, they're going to be able to help you so much better than somebody who doesn't.
100%. I don't have like my clients that are lifters when they come to see me, no matter how bad the pain is, like we're still figuring ways to train whatever we
Yes.
can. Like we will find ways to train. You
Yeah.
will not stop training, and that's important. I think one, for recovery, obviously, like keeping active, staying
Yes.
strong, and doing what you can. But two, just for the mental side of things. Like I know if I take a break from training, even not injured, I feel like I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah. Yes.
Like so, there's when you go see a clinician that doesn't understand the demands of what you do, you're probably not going to get the best result for you.
Mm-hmm.
And same goes
Yeah.
with like coaches and stuff too. Like so many people go out and get their CSCS, and that doesn't mean that they understand, football or basketball or
Yeah.
sprinting or powerlifting or whatever it is that you're doing. You want to make sure that coach understands what you're doing.
Yeah. And that's usually like what I'll recommend to clients or listeners of the podcast when they're trying to seek advice is find somebody who has formal education, has personal experience, but then also has experience helping others through that same stuff. And typically, if they have those three elements, whatever they're telling you probably has some aspect of truth to it. And then it's just applying it and seeing how much of it applies to you. But that's usually good criteria: is they have formal education, do they do it themselves, and have they worked with other people? And like looking at you, I'll toot your horn for you, but you cover that. Like you have all those aspects, and that's absolutely going to help separate you from other physical therapists who maybe don't have that same degree of exposure in all those areas. And one of the things I like about you as a trainer and a friend is you never stop doing anything. Like I laugh because when you were telling me the story about like you have to keep moving for mental health, it reminded me when I hurt my shoulder once. I did a 60-day challenge for calf raises to see if I did calf raises every day for 60 days under certain conditions, how much muscle could I grow? Because I couldn't train my upper body because of my shoulder problem. But I found something. I just needed something to do because I was going to go
Yep.
nuts if I didn't do it. And you are 100% that.
Yep.
You will always find something to do as a way to keep yourself busy, keep yourself progressing. And I would love that if I were going to be working with you as a client of yours to know that you also had that same degree of passion and that same drive to always be trying to progress.
Yeah, and I think that's why too. I mean, I think that's why we work well together as like the coach-client relationship, because I think you just understand that side of me.
Yeah.
And just that side of probably a lot of your clients where, I don't know, I get the zoomies if I don't exercise. Like, I'm pretty sure Maggie would kill me.
Yeah.
Like during the pandemic, when the gyms and everything was shut down, I was going to lose my mind. I was just told, go outside, go exercise.
Yeah. Go run around the building.
Yeah, just go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's like I was talking to Meredith, my wife, and since 15 years old, I've only taken 7 consecutive days off from training twice. So like a Sunday to a Sunday twice in 25 years. And both times were related to injury. Once was actually an emotional kind of mental injury. I was having like some depression issues and was just really struggling to feel motivated. So I still went for walks, but I don't count that like for myself as like workout because it wasn't what I should have been doing. It was what I was doing just to kind of do something. And then the other time I had such bad inflammation in my shoulders and elbows that like I remember one of the machines in the gym, I needed to tighten a screw. And while tightening it, I got sick and threw up because my elbow and wrist were like so inflamed. So those were
Oh,
the 2 times I took off at least one full week. And but I don't know what to do if I don't train. Like I will completely go nuts, and I don't know what to do with it. Like I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, I don't know if
Yes.
you remember. We'll throw it back a little bit. So I signed up for that random arm wrestling competition,
Yes. Yeah.
and when I went, on my left arm, I had something popped. I tore something in my elbow. I don't know what it was. I never self-diagnosed. But I just remember because both my elbows were pretty tore up afterwards. But my
Oh,
left one
sure.
was really bad. And I remember telling you I had tendonitis, but I never told you how bad it was.
No,
'Cause
you did.
I would just deal with it. But I could barely hold a coffee cup. Like my coffee would be spilling out
Uh,
of the cup because my hand would just be
oh my god.
shaking the whole time. So then I'd go through and just deal with training, and then come home and just be absolutely miserable. I couldn't do anything with my arms.
Yes.
It was terrible.
But yes, like looking back, I'm sure you probably told me like, my arm's a little bugged, but we don't need to change anything. So then I probably kept like back rows and chest presses and all this stuff in there, and I was like, well, just maybe lighten the weight load. Whereas
Yep.
if you'd have told me for real, it'd have probably been like much more of a change.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know that. That's why I probably didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Which don't be like me.
Yeah.
Tell
Well,
your coach.
that's how like that's somehow sometimes why like certain people are so good at coaching because you've been the psycho athlete who did all the dumb things. So now whenever you have a client, you're like, I have an idea of what you're going to think and I have an idea of what you're going to do. We're not going to do any of that stuff. So let me give you this instead because I know if I don't give you anything, you're going to go do the stuff I don't want you to do.
Just gonna go
So
feel it out. Maybe it'll work today.
yes. Yeah. And it's like, oh, come on. Yeah. So, one of the things I wanted to ask in regards to like relating to your job, but then also getting into like weight training, the people listening to the podcast, some of them are going to be powerlifters for sure. Some are, general fitness. Some might be bodybuilding type workouts. So there's going to be a wide variety of backgrounds. Um, in your practice, trying to think how to word this properly is there something that you see that commonly everyone doesn't do or they don't do correctly that if they were to do or they were to do it correctly, it would lessen a lot of the injuries and issues they have?
I think the biggest thing is that kind of like auto regulation, like listening to your body.
Mm,
I think people see a number or a rep on a piece of paper that they feel like they have to hit. And even though their body's telling them no, they're like, nope, I'm going to do it. And like you can get away with that sometimes, but if you chronically do that, more than likely something's going to happen eventually. And I think
yeah,
it's the fact that people can't listen to their own body and they just feel like they have to do what's on the program. And I don't know. And it's crazy because coaches too, nobody's ever mad if you cut a rep or don't do a set because
oh
something
yeah,
hurts.
yeah.
Like they're like, that was smart. Thank you for doing that. Let's
Yes,
readjust.
absolutely.
But then the problem arises when you're just, well, I figured I had to hit that fifth set of 10 on bench press
Yeah,
today and now my pec's purple.
yes,
So, I was feeling it on the third set and I decided to still get that fifth set and there it went.
yeah,
So yeah, I think it's more the auto regulation. I'd say would be like the number one thing.
mhm,
Because there's always like honestly the basics. Sleep, hydration, nutrition, and then proper warm up. I think is another one that I like to throw in the basics too.
yeah.
Some people still get in the old habit of like 1970s weightlifters where they just walk in, throw a 135 on the bar, and that's their
Uh,
warm up set.
yes,
So like it's I think just appropriately warming up your body for what you need and what the demands of the training are that day is important. Because in my opinion, the barbell, no matter if you're powerlifting or bodybuilding or Olympic lifting, whatever you're doing, like the barbell is for execution. You should be warmed up before you hit the barbell. The barbell, you
oh,
shouldn't be
100%.
grabbing that thing and like that's your warm up. You should be warmed up and then your warm up for the lift is executing that lift perfectly every time from there.
Yeah, that's a good. I like that. If I were to like shorten it up in a bit, is like you shouldn't touch the barbell until you're warmed up. It's not that the barbell should be your warm up.
Yep.
Yeah, because I have had clients tell me like they'll go in. They're like, well, I just let the first couple sets of squats kind of stretch everything out. I'm like, no, don't like no, do that. I was like, you got to stretch some things before we get under a bar. Yeah, but
Yeah.
those are also the same people that, like you said, is they don't auto regulate. So they're going to say, I got my whole workout in. I got to the 5 sets of five, but I'm icing both knees and my shoulder kind of bugs me. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? Like, we're not trying to just get through 5 by 5. We're trying to build to something in the future. And if we're beating the living crap out of our body every time we go to the gym, we're not going to get to that future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
If the listeners right now, question would be is if they wanted to, like when I have people warm up for workouts, we usually focus on shoulders and hips in regards to like improving range of motion, which would, my terminology might not be 100% correct, but the way I think of it is I want to improve flexibility, which is their ability to achieve a range of motion. And once they can achieve all ranges of motion, we want to load it. And then the ability to go through a full range of motion while resisting load or accepting load would be mobility. So, like useful agility is what mobility is. So, we usually do that for the shoulders and the hips. And then I usually do something for the core to help just kind of tighten the muscles, activate the muscles. And then that usually helps to kind of reset proper shoulder and hip alignment, blah, blah, blah. Is there a typical protocol that you have anyone go through, or is it 100% personalized, or is it partially personalized? How do you do that?
It's usually individualized, but pretty much the basics, depending on what we're talking about. So like if we use a squat for as an example, right? So your ankles need to have good dorsiflexion, or like ankle flexibility, we'll say, for your knees to go over your toes. Your hips have to be able to have adequate external and internal rotation, as well as like flexion to be able to get down. You do need to have some semblance of spine flexion. There's no such thing as maintaining like a true neutral spine. Your spine will flex as you squat. That's okay.
That's a good point. Yes.
Yeah, no matter, you can't help it. It just is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the shoulders too, you need to have, adequate external rotation to get under the bar. Like there's just so many aspects to it, and you need to be able to like, depress your shoulder blades to be able to like maintain that position. So if you don't have external rotation while you're under the bar and able to like stabilize that bar, high bar or low bar, like you're going to end up with shoulder or elbow pain. It's pretty common. So making sure that you have all the adequate like ranges of motion before you get under the bar is usually really helpful. And I usually just have people do like active drills to get there, whatever that might look like. Different for everybody, but some type of, ankle. I usually don't have them do passive stretching, some type of like loaded knee over toe, like calf stretch, or not even a stretch, but like a loaded motion. Do a lot of like hip internal and external stuff, a lot of stuff for like hip flexion and for the glutes to just get them able to get to that. You got to get below parallel, so you do need adequate hip flexion and spine flexion. So just kind of working through those ranges of motion, loading them. Like my own warm-up routines probably takes me like 10-15 minutes, and I always hit my ankles, my knees, my hips, my spine, and my shoulders every time.
Nice. Yeah.
Just to get me ready to get under a barbell.
Yeah, and I think that's a good time frame. I remember like my own journey whenever I was first getting into like Kelly Starrett, like supple leopard stuff, and some of that type of work is you would often see people foam rolling and doing all these things for like 40 minutes, and then they'd work out. And it's like, that's not sustainable. Most people don't even have anything past 40 minutes time wise, so they're going to spend the whole time warming up. But then obviously, no warm up isn't good. So a 10 to 15-minute warm up, I would say it should be kind of like the average. I think that's a very good time frame. And one of the things I like about like movement preparation / warm ups is the benefit of getting like body temperature up as well. It starts to produce adrenaline, starts to produce endorphins. So you start to get kind of like a happy hormonal environment for the workout as well. So there are a lot of components that a proper warm up really, 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 really maximizes performance, which then maximizes the stimulus you get from the workout. So sometimes people, if they're like, well, I don't want to waste any energy warming up, I just want to get right to the lift. And it's like, well, if you warm up, you actually do better in the lift. Yeah.
Yep, 100%. I think people also too, like, I think it's gone almost like the opposite direction from warm ups where like people used to warm up really intensely, even if it's just a barbell, they just like slam 100 reps out at 135 or whatever, you know. But like people used to go for like a 5 or 10 minute run or a 5 or 10 minute bike, and just that alone is a lot to like get your system primed to do something. And I
Hmm.
think, you know, with things like the supple leopard, it almost went the opposite direction where people were getting so specific of like, well, I need my right hip to have X amount of
Oh
internal
gosh,
rotation, and they're
yes.
spending, you know, 20 minutes just on their right hip. And like, sure, I'm sure there's cases where somebody needs some extra warm up for like a specific joint due to whatever. But for most of us, I mean, you just move through multiple planes of motion, load it, make sure everything feels good, you know. You can use the empty barbell to kind of test out how you feel. Oh, you know, my hips don't feel right. Go warm up my hips a little more,
Hmm.
whatever it is. But I think we need to, you have to get your heart rate up on a warm up. Like a warm
That's
up
a good
is
point. Yeah,
warming up. Like you said, you get the body temperature up.
yeah.
Like my heart rate goes up pretty high when I do my warm ups for things.
Hmm.
I do a lot of jumps. I do a lot of, you know, different types of squats and hinges and lunges, just like all in this weird superset of stuff, just to like get myself ready. And when I feel explosive and ready to go, I test it out. I get under the barbell, execute, and I'm like, okay, good to go. Let's do it.
Yeah, yeah. Now, if somebody's looking for ideas, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you: is they can look at your personal training on Instagram and then also Function Reforged. So, what are the two channels that you have? The names?
Yeah, so my business is at Function Reforged. It's just on Instagram. Um, and then I was tired of sending Rob videos via text, and
Yeah.
I got iPhone and they were all blurry, and so I decided to make an Instagram channel where I just post my training videos, and so that's just at PTN Powerlifting. So you can see all the torment he puts me through.
Yes.
But that's I don't post absolutely everything I do on there, but I post a lot of like the accessory work, definitely my main lifts.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. So there's definitely some good like idea generation probably between those two channels, and then obviously they could reach out to you, not to do a like a plug, but you know why not?
plug
So
it, baby.
like I was gonna say, like if they're listening to this, you know, I hope that they would feel encouraged to reach out to you, so then you can actually help them with like a personalized. Because a couple other clients I have train at Union Fitness, and she probably won't care. I'll just use her first name, but Katie, you helped Katie with some like movement screening and type stuff, and then we adjusted her warm ups and some of her movements accordingly to that. So that was really helpful and fun to see.
I'm glad that was helpful for you. I was curious
Oh
what you
yeah,
thought of like how that went, because pretty much what I do if we do a movement screen, like someone comes in injured, not injured, whatever, and we just kind of run through some movements and see how they look. And usually it's for the demands of a specific sport. A lot of times it's powerlifting. Um, so we kind of look at everything, and then I type something up and send it to them and their coach so they can like kind of see what I saw. And a lot of times, you know, when people are starting out with a coach, it's really helpful for the coach because they
yeah,
don't always have time to like assess everything, especially when you are doing like a competitive thing. And it can kind of help streamline some stuff. So I'm glad that was helpful. That's good feedback.
yeah. It's fun. Like I'm fortunate in the sense where I've been able to cap the number of people I work with. So I've been able to. I always want to do a better job, but I do feel like I'm doing a pretty good job of being attentive to each individual person and learning them really well. Um, I always wish I could just do more, but it is helpful, especially some of the other trainers I work with. And like for example, I'm trying to think. Like okay, there's a trainer down here in Florida. She has more turnover because she trains out of like a larger kind of commercial gym, and they have somebody on staff that does movement screens before, like as part of like the sign up for the personal training components program. So they'll meet with the like the training director, talk about services and whatnot. Then they meet with the person who does the movement screening. Then they take that information and they meet with their trainer. So that's a great example to where the trainer now already has some notes and some places to start with that are going to be immediately effective and then also safe. So they know all of a sudden they know right away what to do and what not to do. So it definitely makes the training programming for the trainer a lot easier by having that information. And then, like for my example, being the trainer and you work with one of my athletes, is that was super fun because there are going to be components that I would hope that I already pre-recognized. So there were some of those. And then there were some things where in your notes, she sent me like what you sent her. And I was like, okay. So he sees that happening. Let me dive into that more with the ways in which we're warming up and like different corrective therapies that are built into our program. And then, all of a sudden, squat mechanics are a little smoother, deadlift mechanics are a little smoother. So it is very helpful. So if somebody is listening to this and they have a coach and they are listening and they're like, oh man, how's my coach going to respond if I were to reach out to somebody like Jared? My answer as a coach is I would respond fine. You might want to give your coach a heads up. Just tell them that you're going to do that because probably not all coaches are as open-minded as I am. But I think it's fun. I think it's exciting. The more information we know, the better. And also as a coach, I would think of long-term is if my client goes and sees a specialist, they get this extra information, we implement it into the training, they're going to get better results, going to be more excited, and we're going to continue to work together for even longer.
Yeah.
So sometimes I've coached my coach, like the coaches I coach, to not be closed-minded because if they try to shield their people from talking to anyone else ever, number one, you can't do that. And number two is if it opens it up to where the program might not work super well, and then they have to start hiding things from you, and then maybe all of a sudden they go to a different coach. Whereas if you include someone like Jared, like you, into the programming, it actually benefits everyone. So I've always coached the coaches I coach to include these type of services because it helps everyone involved.
Yeah, and I think too, when people aren't, accepting of somebody else's opinion or feedback or like just willing to listen to it, I think that it's a very closed-minded approach and it inhibits yours and your client's ability to learn and get better, right? So
Yeah.
like even if I said something about one of your clients that you disagreed with, you would either talk to me about it or talk to them about it, and you'd have reasons for it, and there'd be reasons why. If you agree with it or it's something you didn't see, great, we're all better for it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's when people aren't open to other professionals being around their clients or talking to them or working with them, it's just a very closed-minded approach. And it's not saying like go get 2 or 3 coaches. That's really dumb. Stick with one
It ain't
coach.
expensive.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
expensive. Yeah, stick with one coach. But it's like if you have a coach and then you go see your PT or chiropractor and they see some things and have some recommendations, your coach should be very open to those
Yes.
things, and vice versa. Like I work very closely with coaches here at the gym. Like I talk to you all the time about like Curtis and CJ.
Yeah.
And when they're telling me stuff about their clients, it's super helpful for me to help tailor therapy like that. They'll run like programming stuff like, oh, hey, I had them do this. They did really well with it. I'm like, great. Like they're on track for these
Awesome.
type. Like I wouldn't know that stuff if we didn't have an open line of communication, and it just makes everybody better. But most importantly, you, the client.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's 100% true. And also, if you look up um, like higher achieving athletes, their circle of trust, their circle of influence tends to expand. And what I mean by that is you look at somebody. I'm just throwing out a name like say Tiger Woods in his prime. He would have had a coach teaching him how to improve his swing, even though he's Tiger freaking Woods. He's going to have somebody coaching like his swing. He's going to have a nutritionist. He's going to have a massage therapist. He's going to have a chiropractor, a physical therapist. He's going to have a personal trainer. Like they're going to have all these people on their team. And in no way whatsoever does that discredit each individual. It's just putting together the best program. Now they have the financial means to do that, but I like pointing out that as somebody would want to get better, they include more coaches and more information. Now there does become an overwhelming component to where everything has to be filtered, and you do eventually have to pick on one path, like one path to go. But I would rather pick my path by filtering through a lot of information than pick my path via ignorance and not
Yeah.
knowing other options.
Yeah, always
Yeah.
just being open-minded and learning, and then having your people communicate with each other just creates the best product. Like
Yeah.
that's what it is.
So I want to switch over a little bit, if you don't mind, and talk about your individual like journey in the sense of let's get to know you as a lifter. Um, what are you currently working towards? What are your next goals?
So I want to hit a 10 times body weight total in a meet. Haven't done it yet. I think it's there.
Oh yeah,
We're pretty close. I want to hit it. So that's one of my goals. The other one is I want to hit a 5 times body weight deadlift. I just think that'd be
which
really cool.
badass man.
It'd be cool. It's a lot of weight, but it'd be cool. So we'll
Yeah.
get 700 first, and then we'll chip away at the 10 times. But
Yes.
yeah, so those are like my two biggest powerlifting goals. What's been really fun is like if I go back through the years of lifting and just seeing the amount of progress, because I set these goals when I first started deciding that I wanted to be competitive in powerlifting. I was like, I think it'd be really cool if I could total 10 times my body weight and deadlift 5 times my body weight.
Yeah.
And so going off of that, like looking back at where I started, I think my first total was like around ballpark 1,100 pounds,
Okay.
maybe somewhere in there. And my best meet total is like 1427 and a half.
Yeah.
I, you know, and I actually, that's at a lighter body weight than at my first meet too.
Sure.
And the capacity for well over 1,500 is there right now. So it's really fun to just see that progress and like see how much my body has changed, see how much my strength has changed. It's ridiculous. Just with it's been about, for myself, about 10 years of consistent work where I haven't missed a workout. Working with you, we started working together in 2017.
Yeah, I have it marked in my. I have like the document I use to talk with everybody each week has the
Mm-hmm.
date I started with the person.
What was the day?
Oh, I'll have to look. I'd have to look that
We'll
up.
have to
Uh,
figure out our anniversary.
that's true. We would. Yeah,
But
I actually have it, but I would have to close things to get to it, which might mess
that's
up the
funny.
podcast. But yeah,
Um,
it was 2017 we started working together.
yeah, and even in that time too, the consistency. Like I don't like to miss workouts or lifts or anything
No.
ever. I do my
Yeah.
best to always get something in. I can count on probably two hands now, one or two hands, the amount of just workouts I've missed since 2017. So it's probably
Well, yeah.
ballpark like,
You almost never like I can't remember one that you flat out missed. Like we might modify the program. Maybe we lift 4 days a week typically, but you're traveling, so we shift it to 3 days. But we don't miss anything. We just readjusted everything.
yeah, the
You
only
don't
times
miss
I've
anything.
missed are, it's only when I've been like sick and it's just
Yeah.
been like, I'm sick.
Yeah,
Nothing I
like
can
got a
do.
fever. Probably shouldn't
Yeah.
squat today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even then I've done that and that's been fun. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like when you put the consistent effort in though, at the same body weight or even at a lighter body weight from my first meet, I've put over 300 pounds on my total,
Yeah.
which is pretty crazy. Like that's a lot. And then now that I'm a little bit bigger, I, I, I'm going to be a lot stronger this coming, I have the two meets coming up here this
Yes.
year. So, in these next two meets, I should be able to like blow that out of the water. Like it's kind of funny looking at my best meet total and just being like, oh, I could do that tomorrow,
Oh yeah,
like
you do that for reps.
tired. Yeah, it was just
Yeah.
kind of fun. It's funny to look at like, oh, that was like 1,400 was like this unachievable goal for a while. And then I cracked it. And now it's like, well, that's kind of easy now for me. So
Yes.
then
Yeah.
we take the next step. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think just the evolution of being a lifter is really fun with the consistent progress you can make as long as you show up every day, give it your best, no matter how you're feeling. Like you just do what you can that day. Something is always better than nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's huge. Is consistency. Consistency wins over time, and there are going to be some uh like asterisk to that, meaning like consistency with improvement. Meaning, if I see something not working, I'm just not going to be consistent at what's not working. I'm going to try to figure it out a little bit, you know? So there's the consistency with some desire to progress what you're doing. And that makes a huge component. So for you in your personal journey, what are what are some current challenges you face, or what has been some big challenges you face in your process?
So I think throughout my lifting journey, the biggest constraint I have, which a lot of people have, is time.
Yeah.
Time has been like finding the time to train has always been, I think, the biggest challenge. And then when I'm in the gym, the time I'm there is usually limited to X, whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have unlimited, like, it's not like I don't know, I'm just busy. So like, uh, my previous job, so I work at Union Fitness. So I'll open the gym 3 days a week. So that means I'm up at 4 in the morning. The gym gets open by 5. I'm here until 7 because I coach a class after I sit desk for a while. And then right after that, I was on to, my PT job.
Hmm.
My previous job, I was working like 60 plus hours a week sometimes.
Yeah. Crazy.
So like getting all that in. And then I switched to home health. My schedule got a lot better when I switched to home health. I had a lot, so I could be in the gym a little more. It was still tight. And then starting my business now. So I still, gym. I run my own business, and then I'll pick up PRN home health clients every so often. So I'm still pretty busy, strapped for time because things like the business have to be a priority.
Yeah.
So I'd say time is probably the biggest constraint for me, and
Yeah.
I know that's, like I said, that's probably the case for a lot of people. But
Uh,
it's a
yeah.
priority.
It is, but in one thing that's good about that is if most listeners are relating to what you're saying right now. So let's say, for example, you had, oh, my biggest issue is XYZ, and they're like, oh, I wish that was my issue. Like, it was unrelatable. If your biggest issue is time, they're going to say, yes, of course. Now, the next question is how have you been able to be consistent with the same restriction that seems to hinder other people from being consistent?
So I think a couple things. So one is, I love training.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to miss it. And so I always do my best to set aside time for it. Now, there are some days where that means I'm training at 5 a.m. because I have a super long day.
Mhm.
And so that means I'm getting my butt out of bed. I'm throwing down some water and some coffee and just something that I can digest really quickly and get into the gym. And whatever time I have allotted for myself, on some days that's 40 minutes. Some days I could give myself an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever I have available, I just do it. So there are nights where I'm in here at 9 p.m. There's mornings, like I said, I'm in at 5 a.m. It's kind of wherever I know I can fit it in my schedule that day. And I just really prioritize that. And, there are times too, which, where I've had to, maybe switch the schedule around a little bit. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to actually make it in to do a barbell lift today. So I have to actually do my accessories today at
Hmm.
this different place because this is where I'm at and I have, whatever time. So
Yeah.
just as long as it's a priority and you can just set aside any amount of time to get it done and just put the effort in, it's doable. And that looks different for everybody. I'm also
Yeah.
not a parent. Like I don't have kids at home or infants or anything. And I know that's a huge time restraint on people. And that definitely looks different. But I think as long as you prioritize something and find some time in your week to even 20, 30 minutes to like just put in that hard effort for that time, you
Yeah.
will see results.
Yeah. Absolutely. Uh, you and I know as well as anybody. 20 minutes can be plenty to kick the living crap out of yourself. So,
Mm-hmm.
it can be, if you set up like circuits correctly or some exercises correctly, in 20 minutes, I've done workouts where I've like had to take a break like for 2 minutes because it was so miserable in
Yeah.
just a 20-minute window.
Yeah. 20-minute workouts are tough. And like
Yeah.
to give an example, our summer has been getting pretty busy and I'm also peaking for a meet currently and prepping for a meet. So the last lift of the last block before we were peaking for the meet, I had to do high bar squats and deadlifts in the same workout. And I had exactly 40 minutes from when I entered the gym to when I had to leave because we were traveling.
Yeah.
And so I knew I wasn't going to be able to get all my sets of squat in or my sets of deadlift. So I warmed up for exactly 10 minutes and I had 30 minutes. So I literally set up the squat bar and I set up the deadlift bar and I alternated sets warming up, like just going back and forth. And I'd rest about a minute between each one and boom, 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 boom. I did the weight that I was supposed to hit for my high bar squats. I just did one set to what the goal was supposed to be was, not max effort, but, heavy. So I did my
Yeah.
one set there. I did the same thing as a concept on deadlift, just hit one top set of deadlift, and that was better than not going in and training at all, right? Like I got
Absolutely.
something in. And was it miserable? Absolutely. Was it everything that I was programmed to do that day? It was not. But was it good? Yep.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the thing, is it moved us forward. And that's
Yeah.
the key, is it was enough to make something progressive happen. And that's just, I've struggled with a mindset, especially when I was younger, in my early 20s, where I thought everything had to be perfect. Like I had to have, hour and a half in the gym, take these pre-workouts, do all this stuff. Everything had to be perfect for me to make best progress ever. And if anything got in the way, I didn't revert to, oh, if I can't have a perfect workout, let me just not work out at all. I still did stuff. But that was a hard, like, discussion in my brain to say, I wanted an hour and a half today. I wanted all these exercises. Now, because of this, and this, and I'd be angry and mad, I now only have 40 minutes. And this is, bull crap, and I'd be so upset. But I would go in and I would try my best. Sometimes it would be I just do one exercise and just destroy myself. Or I would set up a circuit. Like I know one workout I did, I was mad because I didn't have time to do it, and I didn't have anyhow. I was in a short time frame. I had a t-shirt and jeans on, and I was in the gym. I didn't have time to change. Didn't want to waste time to change, so I went in. I did a deadlift workout where I did 135 once, 225 once, 315 for a set of 30. Like just bang, 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 30, and then left the gym. And I was driving somewhere, and I had to pull over and throw up because I got so sick from doing that 30 rep deadlift. But I showed up to the place. I was soaking wet in sweat, probably smelled like puke, but I got something in. And I remember just thinking to myself, is that was actually miserable. Like I would have rather have done the workout I was supposed to do because that was so awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
like time constraints, as long as you make training a priority, and like everybody's days look different, but as long as you make it a priority and set aside some amount of time
mhm.
at some point through your week to get it done, and you put that like legitimate effort into it and continue to progress, like you got it.
Yeah, and that's a like very good summary, very good point. Um, the one more thing I wanted to touch on before we kind of start wrapping up was nutrition. Now, in order for people to make progress in different areas of focus, say general population fat loss, general population building muscle versus CrossFit athlete versus powerlifter versus bodybuilder, there are going to be there's similar nutritional components, but then there's also differences. So, for example, in bodybuilding world, food choice matters more than in the powerlifting world. Now, there are going to be some exceptions, but in general, I think that's a pretty fair statement. I train both categories, so I feel like I'm okay to say that statement is food choice
Pretty much an
matters a little
expert.
more. So, uh, for you in nutrition, powerlifting, there's definitely more leeway with food choice, but there are still components and concepts that we want to get right in regards to, say, timing. Like you mentioned, eating something in the morning that digests quickly before your workout. So, what do you like? How do you manage nutrition given how busy you are, and what components of nutrition do you try to always make sure are met each day?
So let's start with what I have to meet each day. So
Okay.
I purposefully meet my hydration goal, which is a gallon of water every day. My calorie goal, which generally doesn't fluctuate, but my minimum is 2,500 calories a day. I make sure I, at a minimum, get that in. And then my protein goal, which I had recently upped to like 170. So I get 170 grams of protein a day. So if I get 150, that's like the absolute minimum for me. Like I
Yeah.
can survive on 150. I feel like to like still feel like I've hit the goal for the day, but 170, I haven't missed it in a while, but
Good
170
for
has
you.
been what I've been hitting. So I start there, and then the hard part I think with tracking is understanding how to track, and
Mm.
you don't have to be perfect at it, but even if you can ballpark close enough, that's good enough. But the way I do it with how my schedule works, so I know when I have to be somewhere ahead of time. So I know if I'm going to be able to sit down and make breakfast for myself, or if I have to have something prepped to go, or if I have to like run in home and like just grab whatever's in the fridge and go from there. And so on um, on certain days, like I'm pretty good about getting my breakfast in every single time, and it's pretty much the same thing every day, like eggs and oatmeal and fruit and stuff.
Okay.
So that's at least a constant for me. I try to do my best to set aside time to get that in. If I can't, and I have to, let's say like I was going to my morning meetings at my home health job, which was like 25 minutes away from home. I would get home from the gym, literally throw my scrubs on, grab things out of the fridge, and run, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes because I wouldn't pack things, so all I would do then is just see where that fit into my macros and then just fill in the gaps later.
Yep.
I always do my best to pack a lunch the night before or the morning of, just to make sure that I have what I need, so I'm not having to stop at a gas station to pick stuff up. There's nothing wrong with that. I have to do that. You just look at what's in it and say, okay, this will work for me.
Yeah.
That's it. And then dinner's kind of same thing. So a lot of times I'm working late, so usually end up eating late, but I got to get it in. So I go home, and if I'm tired, I just cook up something quick. Not always delicious, but I get
Yeah.
the nutrition in. Try to make food good, but a lot of times it's just fitting it in where I can with how busy I am. But you have
Yeah.
to, just like the training, you have to prioritize it. Your food has to be a priority for you when you are
Yeah.
training, because, at the beginning of this, we talked about fatigue management and all of that. And if you can't not optimize, prioritize what you're putting into your body to fuel your training, but also just fuel your body and promote recovery, you're not going to be able to make it from one workout to the next.
No.
So
Yeah.
that has to be a priority. And I literally just take a gallon jug with me and drink out of that. If I don't have a
This is
gallon jug, I have a 24-ounce shaker bottle, or sorry, 28-ounce shaker bottle, and I drink 5 of those, and that gets me there.
okay. Yeah.
So I just,
Yeah. And I think that's I think what's helpful to hear is that it can be. It's going to sound funny, but it can be that scattered in the sense that sometimes it's at home, sometimes it's on the run. Sometimes I might be eating in my car, sometimes I'm eating at the office, but you still make sure you get your calories, your protein, your hydration. So no matter how scattered it is, by the end of the day, you still reach these numbers.
yep.
And I'm the same way as I ballpark a lot of things. So I tend to eat very similar foods all the time. So the first time I had, like right now, one of my things I eat is Greek yogurt mixed with fruit juice
Mm-hmm.
and a scoop of protein powder. So it
It's
ends up
good.
being 500 calories with 65 grams of protein. And is it actually like 515 calories? Probably. I just say 500 because it's easier for me to remember. That protein, I do get pretty accurate, but I round it to the fives. So if it's 67, I just call it 65. If it's 71, I'll call it 70. And then I just add that stuff up throughout the day. I have a notes function on my phone. It's on the home screen of my phone. So as I eat stuff, I would just add it up for the day, or I memorize it as I go through the day. But that's what I do is I kind of ballpark the calories. Could I be 100 off here or there? Sure. But 100 off, like for me, right now I'm eating about 4,000 calories a day, so 100 calories doesn't matter at all. So it's it's helpful in my mind to know that there are some standards that we do want to have, which would be calories, protein, hydration, and then how you meet those standards can be varied and can be a little all over the place if that's the way your life looks right now.
Yeah. And, every once in a while, if I have a really crazy week, we usually do our shopping on Sundays. And that's also like meal prep day, where we at least have some basics ready to go. Cause, my wife's also a very busy person.
Yeah.
So like I'll go to Aldi and I'll pick up like a 6-pound thing of chicken breast, and I'll just prep that through the week. And so
Yeah.
I know that I have 6 pounds of chicken breast. I know exactly how much protein that is. And that's like for the week. So at least by the end of the week, I know I had X amount of protein just from the chicken breast, so you can do it in bulk and just hit it, by the end of your week. And is it like great or perfect? No, but it works. And then you were talking about like the meal timing. I can't work out on an empty stomach. I have to eat something before I train. Otherwise, I get faint. I
Yeah.
just feel all woozy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always like, if I know I'm not going to get a meal in right before I train, I always bring some type of snack with me. Like,
Yeah.
just I have it on hand, whether that's fruit or a protein bar or like literally anything to just go in my stomach,
Yep.
to just be in there and give me something. I and like having spoken with you, like it's usually some type of quick digestible carb. I'll even sometimes, if I'm really crushed, I'll just get some Gatorades.
Yeah.
And just drink some Gatorades.
Yeah. That's actually what I'm doing down here in Miami. Meredith is doing an executive MBA program here at Kellogg. So Kellogg University, it's Northwestern University up in Chicago, but they have a Miami campus. So Kellogg is the school of business for Northwestern, but they have like free drinks. So I'll get cans of Gatorade. I forgot they even made cans of Gatorade.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, so I'll snag like 4 of those before I go to the gym, and maybe an RX bar, which is a very clean protein bar.
I
So
love
I'm the
those.
same way as if I train other than legs, if I train anything upper body on an empty stomach, I'll get sick. I'll get like kind of just nauseous and don't feel like I have good energy. Legs, I have to be a little more careful. If I eat too much, I don't feel well. So I have to kind of have this like certain amount and certain timing. So I'm a diva when it comes to leg day. But it definitely does help, um, knowing that, in the sense to where you and I have learned, the hard way, that working out on an empty stomach, we feel like crap. You're going to perform like crap. The stimulus is going to be crap. So, is it better to drink some Gatorade and eat the granola bar or something? Yes. Is that the most perfect food in the world? Probably not. But it's a lot better than the alternative, which would be eating nothing and then getting less of a result from your training.
100%. So I
Yeah.
do have a question for you, which I meant to ask
Oh,
earlier and
okay.
didn't. So I'm going to kind of bring us back a little bit.
Yeah.
As a coach, so I know how I am as a person and as a client, and I question everything. And God bless you, you dealt with me while I was in PT school. So like I know I was like, why are we doing this? Why does this make
I
sense? And
love that.
how
Yeah.
yeah, like how do you as a coach, like what is it like working with clients who do question everything that you say and want answers for why you're programming thing? Like, just talk a little bit about that, I guess.
Fun question. So, what's interesting is the pattern that usually happens is when I first start working with someone, is that's when they're the most questioning, and it's almost never. I can't even remember a time where somebody would have questioned it in like a negative way, like checking on me or like, are you sure? Because if they decided to work with me, they've probably already passed the point of trusting. Like, they trust me enough to pay me and want to work with me. So now the questions are of just genuine interest, and that is fun. Some of the challenge is if I'm working with 60 people and 30 of them want to know the reason why every exercise is in their program, I just literally don't have the time to answer that. So that's the part of me as a person that I hate, that I don't have the time. I wish I could do that. So
Yeah.
some of the ways I'll do it is, if somebody's really new and they have a lot of questions, I'll make a podcast. I'll make a podcast just explaining their workout. And I usually don't use their name. I'll use it as like a person came to me for this goal and this, and I wrote up a program that looks like this, and then I'll explain the program. And that helps because then they get to have a really good, in depth, full, like 20, 30 minutes. And usually, if I answer it in that way, they're like, oh, okay. He literally thought of how every single exercise mattered. I'm good now. I can trust him completely. The other option is, I'll set up like a Zoom call, 10, 15-minute call. I have another client I work with. He probably won't care if I say his name. Bryce. He's crazy strong, and he's young and like getting into all this himself, and he's coaching some people. So he's genuinely interested and wants to know more. So we set up some Zoom calls, and I was sharing some concepts that I was using in his programming from like Josh Bryant, Louis Simmons from Westside Barbell, some other people. So we were talking about like cluster sets, for example, on how to develop his bench press. So I told him, hey, here's Josh Bryant does a really good video on cluster sets. So I sent him a URL from YouTube and said, I'm going to implement them. And then if you want to learn more about why we're doing that, you can watch this video. And then the third way is clients, they have the option to use a online journal. So all my clients are set up with a Google Doc where they have private access to it as well as I do. And then we do weekly check-ins. Some clients use it, some clients don't. The ones who use it, they'll list questions and say, hey, in workout 3, I'm doing, this exercise before this one. Like, so for example, they might ask, why are they doing lat pull downs before bench press? And they're like, I feel like it's making me fatigued for bench press. So I'll explain how doing lat pull downs before bench press actually gives them more mind muscle connection, more proprioception awareness of their lats being tight and their mid back kind of being tight for bench press. So we'll use the online journal where they'll list some questions, and then I'll write a quick description and or put in a podcast link and or a YouTube video to explain that. I do wish I could spend more time explaining and teaching the programming because it's what I find most exciting. The challenging part is writing programs that are entirely 100% unique for each person for 60 people, plus getting my own workouts in and doing weekly check-ins and social media content. So I could choose to spend more time doing it if I didn't do social media, but if I don't do social media, I don't get new clients. So it's that fun balance as being an entrepreneur. You're wearing every hat that a business has, every single one. And all of them have to be worn, all of them have to be accounted for. So what's the balance in time allocation, energy allocation towards each component? So I hope I do a good enough job that everybody's happy with me. And to the best of my knowledge, everybody's happy. But that would be the ways is podcast or YouTube videos, phone calls, and the journals. I'll answer the questions through there.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, I just remember I'd send you like a 6-page email of questions on everything. And I was like, I don't know how he deals with this because I can't be the only one.
No, it's fun because part of it is what I try to remember, and there's been some different reminders of it, but one I remember was Dave Tate from Elite FTS. He had a video where it was a quick little rant video. I think it might have been like 2 minutes, and he said he hears from trainers all the time that they get mad that their clients are asking them questions, extra questions. And I'll clean up the 4-letter words. But basically, Dave Tate said, quit being a jackass. If people are asking your opinion, that's a compliment. They actually care what you think. So
Yep.
don't be mad about that because the day somebody stops asking, you're in trouble. That's not going to be very good for business. So anytime I would get frustrated or I'd feel 99.9% of the time what I really feel is overwhelmed is how am I going to answer all these questions and get everything else I need to get done today. So that's the feeling that I struggle with is the overwhelmingness of wanting to do everything 100%. You can't.
Yeah.
So when I feel overwhelmed, I just remind myself is, hey, they're just asking for your opinion. You don't have to write a dissertation. Just give them some good information, get them started. And I'll actually make a note. If I feel like I have to do like a short answer for somebody, I'll make a note in a separate document I have. And I'll make sure I come back to that like the next week and spend more time for that person. So I try my best to balance it, but just always remembering that if somebody's asking me about anything I'm doing, that's a hell of a compliment. That's huge. That's an amazing position to be in life that somebody cares what you think or what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. I love when people ask me questions, and I also love when they ask me questions I don't know the ansers to.
Oh, dude,
I'm
that's
forced
awesome.
to go like
learning moment. Yeah.
I get to go like figure this out. So I love that. But yeah, I just have memories of like, because I don't, bombard you with questions as much anymore. I feel like anytime you program for me now, I feel like I can read your mind because we've been working together for so long,
you can
which
probably
is really
predict why
fun.
I'm doing things now. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just remember when we started working together, I would just read it and be like, why this? Why this? Why this? What does this do? What does this do? Why this? Why this? I just wanted to learn everything and I'd understand why we were doing it. And looking back, I was like, why did I take all this time like that?
Oh, dude, like I'm glad you did. I'm glad you were like maybe naive enough to, just do it. Like I was telling one of my clients, she's actually another person from Union Fitness, is we have an online journal and she'll write in questions. She'll send videos on Instagram. And I think that online journal, it's like, think of like Microsoft Word document where there's like a page count. I think we're on like 100 pages.
That's awesome.
Like, I have some clients that are over 1,000 pages because we've been working together for a couple of years. So
That's
just a
so cool.
1,000 pages of Q&A
And
for,
but that's like the amount of learning that goes on through there,
yeah,
and that people can refer back to, and I don't know. I think that's really awesome that you do that. So
yeah, I really love it. And that's the favorite part for me. Like, number one, I like problem solving. So I like when somebody comes to me and each person is like a project. Can I solve the project? And then number two, what I really like is just the personal aspect, to where you get to see a human being who tells you their goals in life, and then you get to be a part of that. How freaking cool is that?
yeah,
And that is something that is very rewarding. And there we go. Okay, I think it dropped off, so we'll pick that back up. So, but that's something that's very rewarding and motivating about the job. And I know that you get to see and feel that too in your job. Is you get to see a person that's, a real person, has a name, they have a face, they have a life, and you get a chance to influence and be a part of their journey.
yeah. It's I think the most humbling and best part of working with people
Yeah,
is you get to help them do what they want to do.
yeah, and that's just so cool. Yes.
Yeah, one hundred
So
percent.
the last thing I want to touch on is just if you had any advice or you had any closing thoughts, anything that you think is a message you could share with people if they're wanting to achieve their goals but they're struggling. What are some ways that you've found to motivate yourself and keep going?
So I'd say biggest takeaways are like prioritize what's important. So
Mm-hmm.
if training is what's important to you, you have to prioritize it in some form. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to prioritize it. And then when you have that time, it's 100% effort. You are putting
Yeah.
whatever that looks like that day, you are putting the effort in to get better. Um, like those are, I think, the two biggest things. Same thing goes for your nutrition. Like you just have to prioritize it, figure out what's going to work for you, and just stick to it. And it can be
Mm-hmm.
scattered like mine is, or it can be very organized based on what your
Yeah.
schedule looks like. But for both training and like your nutrition, I think prioritizing it and then executing it, and just don't make excuses for yourself. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Just put your head down and do what you can.
Yep.
That's it, man. You just
I
got to
love
put
that.
effort in.
Yeah. And that is something that's, I think, once somebody learns to do that, it's like the deal breaker. It's kind of like what unleashes them into a new level in life, is to, like you said, for whatever reason you didn't do something you're supposed to do, don't, like, just figure out the solution to it and move forward. Like,
Yep.
don't spend life beating yourself up. You do want to analyze why something was missed so you can correct it and fix it. But just keep thinking progressive, keep thinking forward, keep thinking, how do I do the next thing? What's the next thing? And it doesn't mean you don't enjoy what you're doing in the moment, but just meaning that if you miss stuff, if you miss a meal, just get right back on track. If you miss training, just get right back on track. Just keep pushing forward, and that's going to eventually lead you to where you want to be.
Yeah, I always tell my clients they're not allowed to say the C word, CAN apostrophe T,
Ah,
in any self-limiting way,
I love that.
because that creates just an environment for negativity no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of telling yourself you can't do something, just tell yourself what you can do, or figure out what you can do,
There you go. I like that.
and then
Yeah.
do it. And that's it. Like just and also if you do say the C word, it's 10 push-ups.
There you go. Okay. I
Yep,
like that.
that's the
I
rule.
remember like it was like Katie. You and Katie were telling me about that one time.
Oh yeah,
About the
yeah.
10 push-ups. Yeah, that was great.
I made her do a
Yes.
bunch of them.
Yes, that was wonderful. I loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was like my dad's rule for a while. Like he's a throws coach, and so kids would say can't, and he'd be like, "All right, that's 10," and he
I
would
love
make
it.
them do 10. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's kind of I've adopted it and use it, but it works. If your mindset is very I can't whatever, then you you're gonna limit yourself into what you're actually able to do. But instead, if you just look at those 30 minutes you have and you say I can whatever, and you
Yes.
do it, there you go.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. And then the last thing is, if people want to learn more about you, hear more from you, I know you have a lot going on, but can you run down like the podcasts you're doing and the ways in which people can learn more from you?
Yeah, so I do a podcast with my friend and colleague, Tyler, Dr. Tyler Bordick. He's another physical therapist. It's called the Build Not Break podcast. So we do that. You can find us there. We're on Spotify.
Okay.
You can also contact me on social media at Function Reforged is the Instagram account. FunctionReforged.com is my website. If you want to see what my training with Rob looks like, you can go to PTN Powerlifting, like at PTN Powerlifting on Instagram, and you can see all the crazy stuff Rob has me do on a consistent basis that we have a lot of fun with.
Yeah.
But yeah, reach out with whatever you want, training questions, rehab questions, anything.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Jared, thank you for joining the podcast today, and I appreciate your time.
This was awesome, Rob. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
Heck yeah.